Albert Chapman ran the Elbow Rooms nightclub in Aston, which for 3 decades played host to a number of both celebrities and prominent members of the Underworld.
I started working the doors. First place called Plaza Handsworth, and then I went to the Rum Runner Club. And at the time, there was only probably 4 clubs in Birmingham, really. And people who used the clubs were just a certain elements of people. Characters is the best way to describe them. The Elbow Room was a people's club, and people came there because they knew there was never any problems. I never stood for any nonsense, and I mean no nonsense at all. People out of order, it was dealt with immediately. And everyone knew, without a shadow of a doubt, they didn't perform in the Elbow Room. You play, you get hurt. Simple.
Albert's no-nonsense approach ensured the venue was always packed with celebrities, footballers, and the hierarchy of Britain's underworld.
There are certain elements of people that were either fucking villains, musicians, or sports stars. I mean, George Best, it's in his autobiography. When he used to come down to Birmingham, I mean, and he was playing for Manchester United, he'd come down to Birmingham to get out the fucking way because he didn't get bothered in Birmingham like he would in Manchester. On a Friday night, he'd be in the Rum Runner or the Elbow, pissed up, drive back to Manchester in his E-Type and fucking play like a good one on Saturday. Steve Winwood, that was his very first gig, was the Elbow Room, when he was 13 years of age. There was the guys from Sabbath, Black Sabbath, ELO, Freddie Foreman used to come down to the club. Tony Lambriano used to come down to the club. Charlie Kray was at the club all the time. Of course, Patsy Manning was always at the club. Patsy, I've known since I was about 15, 16, I suppose, something like that. He's one of life's characters.
Well, I was with a girl and she wanted to go down to her house in North London. So I'm standing there under the bridge waiting for her to come back, and all of a sudden I thought to myself, like I could be having my hair cut. So there was a guy standing there by this little hut, and I went over to him and said, "Excuse me, mate, I wonder where you could tell me where there's a decent barber's around here." "Yeah, certainly." Show me where the barbers were. I've gone back to where I'm waiting for the girl to come. And the girl turned around and said, "My God, I didn't know you knew the Kray twins. That's Reggie Kray. That's how I come to meet him."
He went away for one time, and he got 7 years for attempted murder, and he hit someone with a claw hammer. So when he came out, I threw a party for him, and I had a cake made with a claw hammer on the top.
I can remember going to Albert's place when I came out of prison. He put a big party on for me, and we went in the top room where we always go, all the faces. And I sat there, and it never cost me a penny all night long. Everybody that was anybody would go there. I took Charlie in there.
Albert Chapman introduced a friend of his to Patsy Manning. Handsworth-born Don Tia had links with the city's underworld, working as a debt collector around Birmingham's famous jewellery quarter. As Charlie Kray's visits to the Elbow Rooms became more frequent, Don was hired as his chauffeur.
Patsy Manning had his 60th birthday at the Elbow Room. He'd invited Charlie Kray up for his birthday. Charlie was stopping at the Albany, and I got the job to collect Charlie and pick up Patsy and take him to the Elbow Room. Good party and everything. That was my first meeting with Charlie Kray. And over the years, I had a few more meetings with him. And whenever he came to Birmingham, I was his driver, dropped him wherever he had to go, whatever meeting he had to be at, I got him there.
When the Kray twins had been imprisoned, their elder brother Charlie was forced to survive on handouts from friends and those desperate to be associated with the Kray name. Knowing Charlie would say yes to almost anything, so long as free drinks flowed, a man known as Indian Joe had, for whatever reason, told the police that Charlie Kray could supply cocaine. During one of Charlie's visits to Birmingham, Indian Joe introduced him to an undercover policeman who was posing as a chauffeur.
Charlie rang me, I think it was on the Thursday, he said, "I'm up tomorrow. Can you pick me up?" I said, yeah, not a problem. He said, all right, 8 o'clock, the Holiday Inn. I turned up at the Holiday Inn. I had a pal with me. Got to the bar, looked across. I could see the company that Charlie was in. Somebody in the company that I didn't really check for. Got our drinks. Said to my pal, says, when we get the drinks, walk straight past and sit over there. So we went and sat away from him. In the end, Charlie's come over. He says, why aren't you joining the company? I said, well, Charlie, I said, I didn't know if he was in a meeting or not. I said, there's somebody in the company I don't really rate. And he said, who's that? And I told him. He said, okay. He said, but, he says, Joe's got a chauffeur. He says, he's got a new Jag. He says, so we're going out with them tonight. When we're coming out, I decided to leave my car there. And I jumped in the Jag with everybody else, but I jumped in the front. And straight away, I've said to the driver, I says, so you're the chauffeur, are you? And he never answered me. The next thing, Joe in the back of the car, he says, don't be questioning up my driver. And I've said, Joe, I'm not questioning up your driver. I said, I got an interesting chauffeur and I'm talking to the man. There was 7 of us in this Jag at the end of the night because we picked up somebody else along the way. So Charlie was actually sat on my knee in the front of the Jag and there was 4 of the lads in the back. When we get to the Holiday Inn, Charlie's gone to me, he says, so I'll see you Tuesday. And I don't think he got the Tuesday out because I've dug him in the ribs. Gets out the car now, as we're walking into the hotel, I've put my arm around, I said, Charlie, please don't let people know that I'm coming to meet you Tuesday. Because I don't work like that, I don't let people know what I'm doing. Tuesday morning comes now, switch the telly on, and it come on the morning news, Charlie Kray's been arrested.
Over a 3-month period, the undercover policeman had plied Kray with drinks, gifts and cash. He wormed his way into Kray's fantasy-filled life by begging him to reveal more about his activities. Charlie boasted about the tons of cocaine and other drugs that he claimed to have at his disposal. The police didn't care whether Charlie could actually supply the drugs or not. So long as he was offering to do so, he was guilty of conspiracy to supply.
And I went to look for Patsy Manning to find out what had gone on. And Patsy tells me that he was in his flat one Saturday afternoon. He got a phone call from these lads who he thought were villains. And they said they were down for the football. Could they pop round and see him? He said, yeah. They'd been to his flat before. They knew he didn't have a stereo. They brought him a stereo. They give him 20 fags with a £50 note stuffed inside it. Palling up Patsy. Patsy couldn't see that they were all built. And I just went, oh my God.
Charlie was just a friend with everyone. He was a charmer, a real charming man, and a nice man to be with. He respected everyone, he respected all the staff, being a waiter, a glass collector, bar staff, his manners were impeccable. And he got a bit of pride and a bit of dignity about him.
When Charlie Kray appeared in court, he was wearing a £10 watch and had holes in both shoes. Despite his impoverished appearance, Charlie Kray was convicted of conspiracy to supply £78 million worth of cocaine and sentenced to a total of 12 years imprisonment.
Dirty bastards. With what they are well done to him, it makes you sick. He was always... Charlie was always out for like the right opportunity, I should imagine, so it's easy to say. If an opportunity arose. But Charlie wasn't a villain like the twins. Charlie knew everyone, or knew everyone who could get anything. If anybody wanted anything, he'd say, yes, I can get you that, without a doubt. And that was his downfall.
Listening to Charlie Kray's friends, one could be forgiven for believing that he had never done anything wrong in his life. I knew the Kray brothers for a number of years, and I would describe Charlie as a Del Boy character rather than a hardened criminal. He would buy and sell stolen goods, one of his customers being notorious villain Freddie Foreman.
The first time I came in touch with the Kray brothers, with Charlie Kray, and we worked together, and he used to come over and he'd look at all the garages full up with stuff, and he'd say, I'll take it all, Fred, I'll take it a lot. And he used to come over with his van and make several trips and take it and pay on cash. So that saved me hawking it around to different people, you know, to sell in bits and pieces. So he used to take the whole lot. And then he used to talk to me about the twins and his two brothers, you know, and they was young because they was like that much younger than me, 5 years or so younger. So, and he used to tell me the trouble and the problems they used to get into and where they was performing, and you know, there was a worry to their mother and all the rest of it, and there was a worry to him as well. You know, Charlie. They'd give him a hard life and hard time.
Being imprisoned for 12 years at the age of 70 ensured Charlie Kray knew all about hard time.
When he was in the jail, I used to go and visit him everywhere in, so then he was in Long Lartin. They transferred him to Frankland in Durham. And the dirty bastards made him wear a paper overall. This is a 70-year-old man in the back of one of them prison vans to take him to Frankland, freezing fucking cold. And they took him, and on the way they went to, stopped at Lesenic, so they could have some lunch, or the screws could have some lunch, whatever. I stopped there on the way, and then took him to Frankland. And then we used to go and see him there, and he wasn't well, and his health started to deteriorate. And then they shipped him then to Parkhurst. He got pneumonia, became ill. And when he was there, his legs were swelling, and they used to have to bring him on a meet, under visiting, bring him in a wheelchair eventually. And it was disgusting. And then he was transferred then to the hospital on the island, and we used to go and visit him there. And even on the visits, he was chained to the bed. And in fairness, the screws were nice guys, and they were really very respectful towards Charlie. Them bastards set him up, and took it all away from him, and then he just deteriorated in there, and it was totally wrong. It's totally wrong. It should never have happened. And then them dirty bastards will get a feather in the cap, and that poor man's gone to his grave.